All right, we're going to go over some problems that you might encounter when rigging up a character. So first off, last time I talked about armature rigs that Blender has that are already ready for characters. And if you don't have an option for any of those, what you want to do is go to Preferences and then search for Rigify. Click this checkbox. This is the add-on tab. And then we have all these options. So we can use the rigs here if we want to. So what are some issues you might encounter? So first off, if you've been messing around with everything and you want all of your bones to be back in their original positions, all you have to do is the same thing for moving objects back to the center of the world space. You hit Alt-R, Alt-G, and that will do the rotation with R and the position with G. So I add an object here, rotate it, Alt-R, Alt-G gets it back here. Same thing with bones, and you can do that with a lot of other stuff. So one immediate problem that there is with this rig right here is this arm, for some reason, is flipped around. Like this shouldn't work this way. So this arm uses our armature and it has a mirror modifier. So since it has a mirror modifier, we are only editing the left side of the character. So when going through and adding our vertex groups, this one, we have to add the left arm first. So this was done in reverse. So if we just remove these, and what we want to do is add our left arm first, select everything here, hit assign, and now we can add this separate group for the right arm. And that's fixed. Okay, good. And of course, if you want to apply the mirror modifier, you can. So here I've applied it, and so I can select either side, and I can just select and assign both of these manually. So if I select everything that's in the right forearm, then we have everything selected there. If I can deselect it, and I can select everything in the left forearm. So that's good. Some other issues that you might encounter are when you are actually creating the armature. So one thing to remember is one of the things I did was I duplicated a bone using Shift-D and then got it into position. So the problem with that is, since it's duplicated, we want the parent to be different from this bone, because this bone is parented to this one. Since we duplicated it, so is this. So when we rotate the pelvis, it's controlling this bone, but we want this bone to control this bone. So in edit mode, I want to select the one I want to parent to last and hit Control P, and we want to keep offset. Connecting it isn't what we want, because then it would snap over here. So that should fix that, and we can go rotate. Another issue involving parenting is you might have parented the wrong thing. So let's say we've parented the head to the arm. We can see this line here, and that tells us something about how these are connected. So we can do an Alt-P to clear the parent, and there we go. Now we can reassign it. Actually, that goes here. We don't even need to clear it. We can just do this, and let's hit connect. If we didn't want this head connected here, we can disconnect the bone without clearing the parent. So it's still going to have this hierarchy where if you rotate the neck, then the head rotates. So those are some basic issues that people had asked about after the last video, I did want to go over something else. Over here in Edit, you can turn off lock object modes. And this will allow us to select our model here and bones at the same time. And we can see when we select these, the red areas are weight painted so that they will move with the bones. And you can, change what controls what here. So this, if I paint here, that's the same as me assigning these individual points to our vertex group over here. So if you ever have some issues with like things not moving, you can go into weight paint and double check to make sure maybe that you'll realize, oh, the bone's named the wrong thing, or there's no weight painting here, so I must not have assigned it. On to the matter of props. One thing we can do, if we add our props to the actual, if it's a prop that's going to be on the character all the time, then you can model it with just the same, put everything in the same texture as your character. You might not want to do that if you're going to be removing and adding props on. But let's say for the sake of it, we are just going to have a backpack as part of this character. So one thing we can do is actually duplicate this right here. And this is the simple, straightforward way of doing something like this. So let's move this up, scale this, and bevel this. So over here, let's unwrap this again because we've already cut the seams. Let's remove this seam here and unwrap again. And we see this is on top, so we just put it over here so it's the lightest color. And this is the bottom, so we can just put it over here. Actually, okay, yeah, I did change that earlier. So reload. And let's say we want these to be in the same position exactly. We can mirror this with Control M. Go over here and activate snapping for vertexes. And now these are overlapping, so we can get them in precisely the same position, which is really useful if you have a more detailed texture, which this backpack really isn't. But there we go, we have a backpack. And since we duplicated our torso here, let's rename this. Backpack. Now it should just be ready to go because the torso is already set up to work with our bones. Oh, I disconnected that. So now we have a backpack. So let's say this is like a hiker and we want to give them a walking stick. Well, really we have a couple options. We could go for something a little more low res if we want to really go in on that. So what I'm going to do is actually select these. And now we have this really low poly shape. And I'm gonna put an edge loop right here, or a seam, not an edge loop. And I'm gonna put seams here and here and here, here. So now when we go into UV editing, and we'll assign this same material. Oh, have to rotate that. It's a little stretched, but it'll work. So if we're going to use this, if we're just using it in Blender, then we can go into pose mode, select our staff and select the bone we want. Hit Control P and parent to bone. Rotate. Oops. And we'll get this aligned up with our hand. So now character can use this walking stick. Now, one thing to keep in mind is if you are going to have this character exported for a game engine, you might want to create these accessories separately and then parent them in this way in your game engine. So that way you can swap them out in any way that you need. And I did want to do something as a sort of update for expressions. If you were doing expression sheets, so I created this new image and I assigned this material to just this face here. And if we want to select everything that's in there, we can just click on that. So I have these different expressions and I want to cycle through them. I already did a video about this, but I did want to make a bit of an update. So what we can do is call this UI. And if we import images, expressions, so we have this now, let's just put it over here in the center. I'm going to add a single bone, put it over here. Let's hide everything to do with our character by hiding this collection. And in our new collection, I'm going to call this expression menu. You can call it whatever, but I want this to be a specific and a specific relationship with this bone here. So if we set this to increment, we can move this so that it's right here, lined up. So now, let's actually go over here to shading real quick, change this to closest. So now it's easier to see what's going on here. Let's parent this plane to this bone, well, as an object. So now when this moves, this will move, which is important. And we want to do this from the top-down view. So I'm going to duplicate this bone and I'm going to name it cursor. That's what I've been naming it, so might as well stay consistent. So let's give this bone a different view, this specific one. We'll just make a custom object real quick. So okay, this will be our viewport. let's get this lined up like so. We don't need to be too precise. So in pose mode, let's select the cursor, custom object, viewport. And get the cursor over here. Let's rotate this based off of the cursor. Okay, now hide this object, make it so it doesn't render, and let's actually just scale this bone down on the X. There we go. So this is the expression we have selected right now. Is what this essentially is for. So let's get this right over here, move this up a bit, and show everything else. So very similar to the previous video, except we start from this view so that we have this moving with X and then with this as Y. So to control which expression we're using, we just need to go over to the mapping node. We don't need anything else in between here. We just need to select this, right click, add driver, and then we want the expression menu and the cursor. X location, local space, which means this position in relation to like this object, which is right here. So this is going to be like 0.333 or something. And that's not, what is that? Okay, so this is wrong. Okay, so our position here needs to be, our scale is messed up for some reason. I think it's something to do with when this image was imported. I must have scaled it up or something, because we need this to be at 1 exactly, and this needs to be something else. Let's actually do an import again. Yeah, so this came in at a size other than 1, and what we need this to be 1 across here. So this here, 0.5 and negative 0.5, that's 1 unit from the center of our object. So that's okay. When I've imported these before, they've been squares, so it was 1 by 1. That's the problem here. So let's just make this 1 here, and then this needs to be, that was 2.5 or whatever across. This can be, I think, just negative 0.5, and it will be okay. It's about correct for the height. It doesn't matter too much since this is just left to right expressions. Now let's go back to individual origins, scale this, scale it on the X. Okay. Yeah, this size is wrong for this, I think, but it's okay. So we don't need to do the Y for this, but if I go back in here, make 2 loop cuts, go back over here, we can change the expressions. And then when we want to animate this, we can put a keyframe in for the location. Let's just turn turn on the keyframes. And then if we just go down here, hit T, change this to constant so it'll snap between these. We have a little animation. And you can time this to speech or anything else. There's no way to export this into another like system, but you can use this if you're animating not just pixel art faces, but also like if you just had anything like this that you want to animate, that's a series of images. So hope this was useful. I'll be doing more things for low poly in the future, along with other projects. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.